and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The Trump administration is now telling U.S. states to stop full food aid payments to low-income families. This comes as more than 40 million Americans who rely on the food aid began receiving only partial benefits this month amid the ongoing federal government shutdown. The South Korean government and the ruling Democratic Party held a meeting over the weekend and reached a consensus on the greenhouse gas reduction targets, and also decided on measures to reduce the tax burden for income earned from stock dividends. Following U.S. President Donald Trump's approval for South Korea to build a nuclear power submarine, Seoul's defense minister said building one will dramatically bolster the country's readiness against North Korea, and added Kim Jong-un would be unable to sleep, not knowing where it might emerge. We begin this morning in the United States, where the Trump administration is ordering states to stop full food aid payments to low-income American families as the economic strain of the prolonged federal government shutdown deepens. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
The Trump administration is directing U.S. states to halt full food aid payments to low-income families, claiming such payments are unauthorized. A new memo from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which oversees the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, has instructed states to issue only 65% of benefits this month. This follows a Supreme Court decision allowing the administration to withhold part of the funding while legal challenges continue. More than 42 million Americans who depend on SNAP began receiving reduced benefits due to the ongoing federal government shutdown, now in its 40th day. Some states, including New York, Massachusetts, California, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, had continued to provide full benefits after a lower court ruling ordered full payments. The USDA memo now demands that those states immediately undo any full distributions and recover excess funds, warning that failure to comply could lead to the suspension of federal administrative funding or penalties for overissuances. Meanwhile, the economic strain on the prolonged shutdown is deepening. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Sunday that while the U.S. economy was fantastic under President Trump in the last two quarters, growth for the current quarter could be cut in half if the shutdown drags on.
We had a fantastic economy under President Trump the past two quarters, and now there are estimates that the economic growth for this quarter could be cut by as much as half if the shutdown continues.
The comments come as millions of federal workers remain furloughed, while key public services continue to suffer disruptions. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump on Sunday defended his economic policies, touting what he called the dividend of a strong America. He announced that every American, except for high-income earners, would receive a dividend of at least $2,000 per person, crediting his tariff policies for the nation's wealth. Claiming that the U.S. is now the richest, most respected country in the world, Trump called the dividend a reward for the country's economic success. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense minister An Kyu-baek praised the potential construction of a nuclear power submarine as a triumph of self-reliant defense. During an interview with local media on Sunday, An said the submarine would become a strategic asset that will dramatically bolster the nation's readiness against North Korea. He also called the domestic construction of a nuclear power submarine rational, saying that such a project could be completed within 10 years. An also said that such a submarine would leave North Korean leader Kim Jong-un unable to sleep, not knowing where it might emerge. Now, this comes after U.S. President Donald Trump previously gave Seoul approval to develop a nuclear power submarine, but said it would be built at a shipyard in Philadelphia. South Korea and the United States have yet to release a joint fact sheet covering economic and security issues, despite the Korean government earlier saying it would be unveiled sometime last week. For more on what the paper might include, we're joined today by Professor Choi Hyun-jin, professor at the Department of Political Science at Kyunghee University. Professor Choi, thanks for joining us this morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
So it appears the two sides have yet to reach an agreement on the nuclear submarine program. What details might be included in the joint fact sheet?
Yeah, this joint fact sheet will likely to cover both economic and also security outcome from the recent summit. On the economic side, it should include updates on the tariff and investment negotiation, especially how South Korea's planned $350 billion investment plan will be managed over time. On the security side, the focus will be on three key issues. The first will be on the transfer of wartime operational control from U.S. to Korea. And secondly, the South Korean defense budget, how to increase raise it up to 3.5% of GDP by 2035. And the last one is the ongoing discussion on the nuclear-powered submarine. I think that the last one, the submarine one, seems to be delaying the release of the fact sheet now. Because as you just mentioned, Seoul wants to build a submarine at home with the nuclear fuel provided by the United States. However, the Washington appears to prefer its construction at an American shipyard, possibly in Philadelphia. But I think that once this difference is settled, we can expect a joint statement and joint fact sheet to be released very soon, perhaps emphasizing that both sides remain fully aligned on joint defense despite the delay.
Right, it seems there are some key issues still left to discuss. And Seoul's defense minister says a nuclear power submarine will pose a serious threat to North Korea. What would owning one mean for South Korea's security?
It would be a really big step for South Korean defense capability. A nuclear-powered submarine can stay underwater much longer and move faster and operate more quietly. And that means we can track North Korean submarine and even Chinese one without being detected easily. It also gives South Korea a stronger second strike capability and makes it harder for North Korea to predict our movements. And here, the military term second strike capability is simply speaking a retaliation. Okay? And that's why Minister An Gyubek called it a milestone in South Korean defense, and also it would make Kim Jong-un very nervous. It can also strengthen joint deterrence with Washington. The U.S. will provide support and also technology, while South Korean new submarine will make the alliance a stronger and more balanced. But however, there is also some possible challenges as well. Seoul needs to be very careful about these new challenges. So this development of new submarine system could trigger a possible arms race with China and Russia. And it could lead to some economic pressure from Beijing. So it is true that it's very important for South Korean defense, but however, it must go with the smart diplomacy and stronger preparation for possible backlash.
I see. And like you mentioned, Seoul and Washington appear to have made some progress on transferring wartime operational control, especially with President Lee Jae-myung seeking to finalize this before the end of his term. How do you think this issue will play out?
Yes, this is a very important development right now. Seoul and the United States have agreed to move on to the next stage of operational control transfer. And if that goes well next year, the two presidents can set the final transfer date. And it would make a historic shift from the U.S.-led command to a truly combined one between the two countries, where a Korean four-star general take the lead in wartime operation. And I believe this does not weaken the alliance. It shows a more balanced and mature relationship based on shared responsibility and strong trust. The United States will provide coordination and strategic assets, while South Korea takes the greater responsibility in its own defense. But there are also challenges as well. So even after the transfer, the United States will keep far stronger intelligence and also surveillance capability on North Korea and other neighboring countries such as Russia and China. So the real issue will be how South Korea can lead the operation effectively under this informational gap. And so this will require very careful planning, better information sharing, and strong joint exercise to make the system work.
I see. And on defense costs, Seoul and Washington agreed to raise South Korea's defense spending to 3.5% of the country's GDP by 2035. What's your take on this?
Okay. Also, this is very meaningful step for South Korean defense capability. And Seoul and Washington agreed to raise Korean defense budget from about 2.3% of GDP now to up to 3.5% by 2035. And this is almost a 50% increase. It shows Korea is taking more responsibility for its own defense, not just relying on the United States. The extra funds will mostly go to drone system, missile defense, and also our own defense system against North Korean nuclear threats. Of course, some will be spent for purchasing American weapon system, the state-of-the-art weapon system such as F-35 fighter jet. But still, this is not just about stronger defense. As Seoul spends more, I think the United States will expect Korea to take more active role in regional security, such as deterring China and handling tension over the Taiwan Strait and also West Sea. And I think this could put Korea in a tough situation between Washington and Beijing. So I strongly believe that this increasing budget will be good for Korean defense, but it also calls for a careful diplomacy to manage new strategic pressure from neighboring countries and to avoid any possible conflict with China and Russia.
Absolutely. We'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Che, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
In other news, Russia announced it held talks with North Korea in Pyongyang to discuss the further development of bilateral cooperation. Now, according to the Russian Defense Ministry on Saturday, Deputy Defense Minister Viktor Grammy and North Korean Defense Minister Do Kwang-chul discussed advancing bilateral cooperation between their respective armed forces. Grammy underscored that the fraternal relations between Russia and North Korea are actively expanding across many areas, including military cooperation. A Russian delegation was in Pyongyang from last Wednesday to Friday for talks. Following last week's discussion on greenhouse gas reduction target proposals, the government and the ruling Democratic Party have set a figure ahead of the submission to the United Nations next week. The ruling bloc have also decided to lower taxes on income earned from stock dividends. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin has the details.
The government and ruling Democratic Party have reached a consensus on South Korea's 2035 greenhouse gas reduction targets. A high-level policy consultation meeting on Sunday was attended by Prime Minister Kim Min-seok, leader of Democratic Party Chung Cheong-rae, and Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Won-sik. At the meeting, the target for reducing South Korea's greenhouse gas emission under its 2035 nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement was set at the 53% to 61% range.
For a sustainable future, reducing national greenhouse gas emissions is a task that can no longer be postponed.
The government had presented two final candidate plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions last week, by either 50 to 60% or 53 to 60% compared to 2018 levels by 2035, replacing the current target of a 40% reduction by 2030. Through this meeting, the upper limit has been raised by 1 percentage point, a move interpreted as showing the government's stronger commitment to reducing carbon emissions. Civil society groups had called for a 65% reduction, while industry representatives proposed a 48% reduction. The government and ruling party pledged to seek additional support to ease the burden on industries through measures such as the KGX Green Transition Strategy to support Korean companies in transitioning to decarbonized industries and to foster the growth of a greener society. The final target range will be approved by the Presidential Commission on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth and the Cabinet this week, before submission to the UN next week. Other items on the agenda included tax relief measures aimed at sustaining the recent rise in the Kospi Stock Index. The ruling bloc agreed to lower the top tax rate for dividend income from 35% to 25%, in an effort to strengthen shareholder value and reduce the tax burden for income earned from stock dividends. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Shifting gears to esports, South Korea's T1 has made history by clinching its third straight League of Legends World Championship title on Sunday. In an all-Korean final held in Chengdu, China, the team led by legendary captain Lee Sang-hyuk, known as Faker, defeated KT Rolster in a tight 3-2 match. Sunday's win also marks T1's sixth World Championship victory overall since 2013. No team has won more world titles than T1. And it's been about a month since the Korean government officially joined the Hague Adoption Convention, which aims to protect the rights of child adoptees. Our correspondent Park Gun-woo recently sat down with one of them, whose search for his birth parents here continues.
Even after 5 decades, for some people, the search for their birth parents continues. 57-year-old Park Won-il, also known as Philip Peloshu, was sent to an orphanage in Korea just 3 days after birth and adopted at the age of 3. Although he says he grew up in a loving family in the U.S., Park said he sometimes faced difficulties.
I really didn't feel like I fit in. You know, Colorado at that time, and even today, I think is mostly Caucasian. You know, I kind of stood out like a sore thumb in that sense. So.
That's why he always wondered about its roots and has tried every possible means to find them.
All the DNA tests that I can, and then the other thing is I try to collect all the documentation I can. Got these pictures from the adoption agency, and these were pictures of me, you know, that were presumably sent to my adoptive parents, so that they could, you know, identify the child that they were getting.
During his search, he's managed to gather bits and pieces of information about his birth, including his name, assumed birthday, and even an address in Seoul of the custodian who sent him to an orphanage. While some pieces of information about him gave him hope, he says in most cases it ultimately led to nothing.
You get some pieces of information, you start getting your hopes up, and then it turns out to not go anywhere. And that's why I feel like many times I'm on a roller coaster of emotions in terms of this search.
Fortunately, he hasn't been alone in this journey, as organizations like Korea-U.S. have been there alongside him, helping him find related documents and communicate in Korean, a language he doesn't speak. Korea-U.S. has also been working hard for decades to raise awareness and advocate for better laws protecting adoptees' rights, saying there's still much more that needs to be done.
Normally, when you visit a local office or access the internet, you can easily get a family relations certificate without anyone's permission. But that's not the case for them, as their information is often incomplete. That needs to be restored so that they can find them with just a single click.
As the government also announced last month that Korea has become a contracting party to the Hague Inter-Country Adoption Convention, following an official apology for those who have suffered, more governmental support could follow. That comes as there are known to be around 170,000 people adopted abroad since the Korean War. But alongside these measures, Park says he wants to focus on continuing his search as he is getting older, as well as his biological parents. His final words, if he finally gets to meet them, were these.
You know, I've lived long enough that I recognize, you know, life works in mysterious ways, and that I harbor no ill feelings or ill will towards whatever circumstance my birth parents might have been in that had them give me up for adoption. I want to kind of complete, you know, for my own completeness, to understand where I came from, and I hope that they're not afraid to come forward.
박건우, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is the world now. A powerful super typhoon has slammed into the Philippines, forcing nearly 1 million people to evacuate and killing at least 2. Super Typhoon Fung-wong made landfall late on Sunday night in Aurora Province on Luzon, with winds of 185 kilometers per hour and gusts up to 230 kilometers per hour. By early Monday, it had weakened slightly, but continued to pound Luzon with torrential rain and destructive winds. Authorities warn of life-threatening storm surges and floods. Airports in the area are closed and nearly 300 flights have been canceled. The storm comes just days after Typhoon Galmegi hit the Philippines, killing more than 200 people. Authorities say Typhoon Fung-wong will move northwest through Monday before heading to Taiwan midweek. In the UK, the BBC's 2 top executives have resigned following a backlash over how the network edited a speech by U.S. President Donald Trump. Director General Tim Davie and new CEO Deborah Turnus announced their resignations on Sunday, saying they take full responsibility over a documentary on the 2021 Capitol riot. The documentary edited a section of Trump's speech, putting together 2 parts of the speech that were actually more than 50 minutes apart, sparking accusations of bias. Both leaders said they're stepping down to protect the broadcaster's credibility. The British government has pledged to help BBC restore public trust as it searches for new leadership. In Brazil, a powerful tornado has torn through a town in the south of the country, killing at least 6 people and injuring hundreds, just as the country prepares to host the UN Climate Summit. The storm hit late Friday with winds reaching 250 kilometers an hour, destroying about 90% of Rio Bonito do Iguaçu in Paraná State, home to 14,000 residents. Authorities say more than 750 people were injured and rescue teams are still searching for missing. The state governor has declared 3 days of mourning, and President Lula has ordered emergency aid to the region. The disaster struck just before Brazil hosts the UN Climate Summit COP30, which is scheduled to begin on Monday in the northern port city of Belém. Lady Gaga and Kendrick Lamar lead this year's Grammy nominations as K-pop earns its first ever spot in the Songs of the Year category. Lamar tops the 2026 list with 9 nominations, including Album of the Year for GNX, while Gaga follows with 7 for her electro-pop record Mayhem. 2 K-pop tracks, Rosé and Bruno Mars' Apathy and Huntrix's Golden, made with their inclusion in the main song category. It's also the first time that 3 rap albums appear on the Album of the Year shortlist. Winners will be announced in Los Angeles on February 1st, 2026.
It's already tough to get moving on a Monday morning, and the cold air is making it even harder. Once again, we saw a sharp drop in temperatures at the start of new week, and some of the inland areas and mountainous regions saw frost and thin ice forming due to cold air flowing in from the north. Tomorrow morning will be even colder, with Seoul dropping to around 3 degrees Celsius, but this round of cold spell will not last long. By tomorrow afternoon, temperatures will begin to rise, and on college entrance exam day on Thursday, conditions will be milder than seasonal average, so there's no exam day cold wave this year. And for this afternoon, Seoul gets up to only 11 degrees Celsius, Gwangju, Daegu topping out at 14 degrees under sunny skies nationwide, along with strong winds. The weather outlook for this week looks promising with fairly sunny skies in most parts of Korea. Make sure to dress in layers and take care with the big temperature swings.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.